Welcome back to the Keiser Report. Time now to go to Dr. Paul Craig Roberts, live on the Keiser Report. Well, tape, but here in person. Welcome.
Thank you.
All right, Dr. Paul Craig Roberts, you are on a list, a blacklist of bloggers, writers, and websites who should be tried for treason. In response, you've joined an action against Washington Post and Prop Not. What the heck is going on?
Well, nobody really knows. I think what they're trying to do is to shut down the independent internet media so that they can continue to control the explanations. They have this...
When you say they, who do you mean?
The oligarchy that rules the United States, the 6 or so powerful private interest groups, the military security complex, Wall Street, the big banks, the Israel lobby,
and
agribusiness.
Media, the biggest media outlets.
The media, I think, are owned by the oligarchs. You know, 90% of them were concentrated in 6 mega firms in Clinton's final years, and they are not a media, they are a ministry of propaganda.
So you're on a blacklist now. I mean, this sounds like McCarthy times, McCarthyism times. Is there a parallel to this?
I think it's worse than McCarthyism, Max, because I don't think it's really directed at us, it's directed at Trump. And I think what they're trying to do is to prevent him from becoming president. Because his determination, if we believe him, that he wants to get along with Russia, and he's not in favor of all this conflict, and he's doubtful about NATO. This is a huge threat to the military security complex.
Yeah, that's a lot of dollars. I mean, you were in Washington, you were Assistant Treasury Secretary in the Reagan administration. You've seen how the money is spent. So we're talking about some severe pay cuts. He's already tweeted about how he would cut back on Air Force One, cut back too much spent on different, projects. I mean, he's looking to cut some fat. Is there a lot of fat to cut?
Well, there's approximately $1 trillion annual budget for the entirety of the military security complex. And you have to remember, Eisenhower warned us, what was it? It must have been over half a century ago, about the power of the military-industrial complex, he called it. Of course, they've had another half century to get institutionalized. And what's important to them is having a major enemy. So we had the Soviet Union all during the Cold War. Now, when Reagan and Gorbachev wound down the Cold War, and then the Soviet Union collapsed, they lost their major enemy. They didn't have one, so they went to work creating the Muslim threat. But the Muslim threat isn't a big enough of an enemy.
It kind of played itself out. After the Osama bin Laden funeral at sea, that was kind of the climax to that, and then not much more left in that story.
So they had to recreate the Russian threat, and so we've had now, about 3 years of the worst kind of propaganda and lies. None of it has any evidence. And they've demonized Russia, they've demonized Putin. And so they're trying to recreate the dangerous threat that protects their hold on money and power. It's not just the money, Max. They have tremendous power. And for them, they're already overflowing with money. I think the power is even more important. So that's what's at stake. And Trump, they see, is a threat to this. And so what we're witnessing essentially a coup against the president-elect to prevent him from taking office.
Now, you're just filling in so many details here, and I want to unpack this a little bit to give folks some background. I mean, so you were in Washington during Cold War I. How is it different this time? And then we'll get into how this coup potentially could take shape. But how is it different than Cold War I?
Well, in Cold War I, every president that I can remember was working to reduce tensions with the Soviet Union. You know, we had Kennedy working with Khrushchev to handle the Cuban Missile Crisis and to pull out the American missiles from Turkey. We had Nixon. He gave us SALT I. You know, the Strategic Arms Limitations Treaty I. He gave us the Anti-Ballistic Missile Treaty. Carter gave us SALT II. Reagan gave us the end of the Cold War. So they were always trying to reduce the tensions. But what's happened with Obama is this massive increase in tensions. The tensions, I think, are higher than ever before. I mean, if you are the Russian government and you sit every day and you see new lies told about you, you wonder, what is this all about? And then missiles on your border, all this NATO threat, maneuvers, threats, accusations. It's very destabilizing.
Help me to understand something, because, okay, Cold War I was at the end of World War II, where Russia was emerged from World War II as a powerful nation that America feared, and they had atomic weapons, and we went into this period where there was competing systems, communism versus capitalism. It was kind of a vestige of World War II, and then, as you point out, the statesmen de-escalated. They worked to tone it down and to bring back more of a peaceful world environment. But here, as you point out, they just decided to pick kind of Russia because they ran out of enemies, and they've escalated it without foundation. There's no foundation for this.
Right. It's all made up. And that's why they're trying to shut down the alternative internet media, because we tell the truth. And you have to understand what's happening in the United States is no one trusts the New York Times, the Washington Post, CNN, none of the TV. They don't have any credibility, and so the oligarchs are losing control over the explanations to people like me on the internet,
right,
to Counterpunch,
right,
to all the sites. And so they're saying, gosh, if we can't control people's minds, we can't get away with our agenda. We got to close down these guys. So that's why they have deemed us Russian agents. But mainly this is directed at Trump. What they're trying to do right now is to keep him from being president. So
again, we're going to get to that in a second, because that's kind of the pièce de résistance. I want to get into this. That's really the meat of it. But let's explore this a little bit more. So let's talk about, what you're describing is from the mainstream media for the last 5 years to hold on to power. They've been disseminating frickin' lies. The buildup to the Iraq War was a pack of lies, as my friend George Galloway, told brilliantly to the Washington in front of a panel. Most of the yellow cake was a frickin' lie. You had in the UN, Colin Powell with his talcum powder, a lie, right? So that is the very essence of fake news.
Yeah.
So where do they get off calling what you do, what we do, what others do, fake news? We're telling the truth.
Well, they don't worry about that. They're not interested in facts. They're interested in controlling explanations. So that means they have to lie, because they can't go to the people and say, hey, this is our real agenda, because then no one would support it. So they have to create a cover for their agenda, and that's what is the function of the lies. So, if people knew what they were really up to, they would really be in deep trouble.
All right, this episode will air on Tuesday, the 20th of December, which is a key day in this whole electoral college. You've been talking about it. Let's talk about it. Will there have been an electoral college coup on Monday night? Dr. Paul Craig Roberts.
They're trying to get that. I think what they're doing, Max, they are threatening or bribing electors not to vote along the lines that the state voted. Well, for the elector to do that, he has to have cover. So the cover is that the Russians stole the election for Trump, and Trump is a Russian stooge. He's a dangerous to America, like the New York Times has said, because he's actually a de facto Russian stooge. So all of that story is cover for the electors to be able to take the bribe and vote against the people in the state they're representing. Well, will it work? I can't say. I don't know. It's very audacious.
Audacious.
It's extremely audacious. And so whether this...
It's the audacity of coup. That should be Obama's next book when he leaves office. The audacity of staging a coup based on fake news that was not really fake.
But you see, Obama himself has demanded a full-scale investigation of the government of this, and he has lent his position to legitimizing these false claims.
Well, he's at risk of spending his post-presidency career giving lectures at Chuck E. Cheese and the International Pancake House, because, all these other presidents like Clinton's and Tony Blair, warmongers, successful, they went on to make millions in the, after-dinner speaker market. But who wants to hear Barack Obama talk about how he lost to Donald Trump? I mean, he can do kid shows maybe, or bar mitzvahs. But this guy's post-presidential career is not worth a flat nickel.
Well, I don't know, because the oligarchs will reward him because he did their bidding while he was there for 8 years. So it's not that anybody wants to hear any of them. They just give them this money. This is the cover for giving them the money.
Many progressives backed the coup in Egypt to oust the Muslim Brotherhood, and now they back the Electoral College coup to oust Trump. So is democracy officially nearing an end?
I don't think it exists anywhere in the West. I don't think, you know, what would happen, for example, if Marine Le Pen were to win the French election? There's a good chance she'd be assassinated.
What?
Yeah. Why are the CIA going to let somebody hostile come the president of France?
All right, let me ask you this, because
No.
Trump is he's saying that the CIA is full of bunk. He's saying that the NSA intelligence is worthless.
Yeah.
You know, he's saying don't listen to these guys. And, well, he's going to be president of the United States. So what happened? Are they risking their entire careers to try to oust him now? And does that indicate that they're serious about this?
They're very serious. Either they are confident they're going to pull off a coup, or else they're setting him up for an assassination. Because
now you're a former assistant secretary under the Reagan administration. You don't throw around these terms lightly. I mean, that's a pretty
Max,
serious.
you know as well as I do, the CIA is assassinating people all the damn time. I mean, look at all the governments we've overthrown. It's just common knowledge. Just go read the book, The Brothers, about John Foster and Allen Dulles, and you'll see they were this is where they were operating a half a century ago. They're a lot worse now. So I think yes, because you know, if you create what they're doing. They have created in the minds of some Americans the notion that Russia is a dangerous enemy. And now they're associating Trump with a dangerous enemy. So this makes a certain part of the population, particularly the really patriotic, not too knowledgeable part of the population, say, oh, well, he's working for Russians. So now...
Well, he's working for labor, farmers, and that's his constituency.
They don't know that. That's not what they hear. And so it's entirely possible that they're setting him up. Now, if they assassinate him, they can pull up some right-wing stooge who was upset about the Russian agent president. So just like they pulled up Oswald for Kennedy, just like they pulled up that guy for Martin Luther King, they always have somebody they can say did it. So I think it's a serious situation. The only explanation, Max, for this is either they are going to have the electors vote him down, or they're going to assassinate him. There's no other reason.
Put a pin in it. We're going to do a second segment if you can stay with us.
Okay.
All right. That's going to do it for this edition of the Keiser Report with me, Max Keiser, and Stacey Urban. I'd like to thank our guest, Dr. Paul Craig Roberts. You can follow us on Twitter at Keiser Report. Until next time, bye, y'all.